All right, so I'm thinking of this video as kind of like what I'm doing, the writing edition. All right. So, as you know, I run a company called Soul Tour. We are a fully integrated self mastery coaching and business growth consulting firm. And we've always had this like mission and calling to help adult humans be their big selves and do their big dreams before they die, live the lives they were born to live, build the business empires of their soul. Right. So I espouse and teach a lot about redefining success through the lens of success simply being to know your true self, to love your true self, and to create a whole life that is congruent with your true self, right? And I do that. Like everything, there is no thing that I teach at Soul Tour that I have not done in my own life or tried or fine tuned and created the body. Most of it is our bodies of work that I've created by living the life that I live. And so as I've recalibrated my own life into congruence with my true self, as I've come to know it through human design and through the other, what I now call congruence or true self mastery codes, various archetype systems that I have mastered and now teach. I have, recalibrated down to essentially a 3-day work week where for 3 days of the week, I only have deliverables, meetings, timelines, due dates on 3 days of the week. I don't do any meetings Mondays or Fridays. And some of that is so that I can take really impeccable care of myself and my children. And some of that is so that I can write. All right. I have this really strong download, vision, intention, goal to create a New York Times bestselling book every year for the rest of my life. And I've been systematically moving, like I moved my child and I here from the United States to Portugal last year. I've built this engine of profit and transformation in my business that runs without all this effort from me. And I've done all of those things, not just because it sounds good, but for the purpose of freeing me up, clarifying my signal and freeing my time and energetics up so that I can actually write, because I had some big bodies of work coming through me. I've written 4 books, and I consider myself having 3 books in progress, a nonfiction book on my health journey with an autoimmune condition, misdiagnosed and undiagnosed for almost 20 years, and coming out from under that with this wild combo of alternative medicine and diet and Western medicine and the way leading edge of Western medicine, the kind that you'll never get at a regular doctor or HMO, traveling the world to get to that. And Pilates and a wild shift in my way of life and trauma healing through various, including psychedelics, including EMDR, including talk therapy, all of those things. So I have a nonfiction book on my health journey, a nonfiction book on my method, the Soul Tour method, which you can think of like as how to live the life you were born to live, how to live a big life, how to live a life of ritual stacking is what I call it. How to understand the journey from being how to understand and facilitate and accelerate the journey of living under the influence of your core trance to congruence, embodying Queen Goddess Warrior Lover. And then I've had this children's book concept or series that I've been playing with my little girl. Her name is London Kirk. London like the city, London como Londres. If you're Portuguese, or como Londres, if you speak Spanish. London Kirk, Science Princess. That's her persona. And I've been working on that. And as I've been writing, I am a projector in the human design system, which means I'm not really meant to do work things alone. So I had an invitation come in from someone who suggested, you really should look at having a writing partner, even though I'm quite prolific on my own. And as I sat with that, I was like, I do already have writing partners. Like when I'm working on nonfiction, I tend to veer into reading, like nonfiction self-help, I tend to veer into reading Wayne Dyer. And that's odd. That's a common strategy for me. When I want to start a project and when I'm pouring my energy and time and attention into it, I'll tend to make a study of it. And part of what I do in that is I take the master class from whoever is the master. I want the mastery ones out here, right? As a projector, I'm really good at protecting my energy. And it's not in a, like, even in a defensive way anymore. It's more like I love to spend time in my own aura, and I love to be around other masterful beings. And I think we live in the best time to be alive for that. So I tend to like immerse in the books of the people whose work has had similar impact to the work that I'm creating. I was recently cooking and like thinking about the farm on the beach and like brewing that up. That's Farm on the Beach is our life that we're creating. And I somehow found my way into Martha Stewart's masterclass, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's literally about this woman who has a farm who turns it into content. Like, it's so appropriate. And so as I was working on this children's book concept, I remembered that I had enrolled in a BBC Maestro course taught by this woman. BBC Maestro is basically like the BBC's answer to Masterclass. Taught by this woman named Julia Donaldson, who wrote a bunch of my kids' favorite books, including The Spiffiest Giant in Town, which is called The Smartest Giant in Town in the UK, and The Gruffalo. If you know any of those books, she wrote them all. And I remember that I had enrolled in this, and I was like, she could be my writing partner on this children's concept, right? And so I wanted to just give you a little bit of a reaction to that, because there were a couple things that came up in that were really pivotal, and I want to capture them in the interest of convincing you that you should also bring in as your co-creators and co-creative partners those who are masterful at whatever it is that you're trying to do, whether it be build a business or write a children's book. And you can have access to those maestros now at your fingertips on platforms like BBC Maestro or like Masterclass. I don't watch TV almost at all. And so this is what I do instead, as I pour into myself the mastery, energy, spirit, and strategy from these people. So I was really interested to hear her talk about traditional tales and how so many of her works, her picture books for children, are inspired by old traditional tales, because London and I have long made a practice in our family of reading goddess stories from different traditions. And so that was really inspiring. But what really got me was she said the first two things you got to do is really focus on your characters and your setting, which seems obvious, but even for a children's book, which is only maybe a few hundred words long. And what she said she does is she asks herself about character first. What is different about this character? Like, she has a witch, so what's different about the witch? And why? Why is she different in that way? Then she asks, what problem could the character have, right? And there's kind of a normal, like, what does this kind of character normally do, and how is this one different? And so and then she does setting, and she asks, like, where is the story set, and why and how is this setting different from other settings like this? And so I thought I really sat down and had fun with that. I started with, this idea of London Kirk, the science princess. What are the things that people love about the real London, right? That she has all these growth mindset and self-esteem, high self-esteem catchphrases that she yells out and utters out, largely because I've been programming them into her head forever. Like, mistakes are how your brain grows, and we're a figured out family, and I look awesome. When she looks in the mirror, she's like, oh, I look awesome. And so maybe the character would have growth mindset and self-esteem, high self-esteem catchphrases like that too. I feel like a lot of the children's books these days that want to teach these things often teach it through a crisis. Right? What if, I think it would be really unusual and cool to have a character who didn't have the crisis and just had the self-esteem. All right. And so I also thought it would be cool, like my London, the real life London is basically a real life. She's like a baby superhero who is so super powered. She's learning how to use her powers, and she kind of breaks a lot of shit in the meantime. She's kind of like, raising London is a little like raising a really beautiful Bam Bam, or living with a really adorable bumper car. London is part Black and part Samoan. So I often, and the only other person I've ever known of who was Black and Samoan is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So sometimes I envision that I'm just raising a baby Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So when I come home and I'm like, why is this bookshelf down here? And why is this coat rack downstairs? The babysitter's like, London wanted to move them, so she went and got them from upstairs. She literally just single-handedly moved the furniture down here. And I tell her that all the time because sometimes it's frustrating to be that powerful and not know how to use it. So she bangs into things a lot, right? And so I'm teaching her about how to root her body in and down and how to be on two strong feet. And I tell her, I name it for her, baby girl, you are a little superhuman. You have super senses and superpowers, and we are just learning how to use them. So be patient with yourself, right? And so I thought, what could be different about this character, like the real London, is that she could eat super strong flavors and have super senses. London is mildly autistic. Her senses are so sensitive. She can hear and smell things that nobody else can. Maybe she would be super strong physically and be learning and bump into things, right? Maybe she would have a super sweet tooth and not really have an enough is enough button like the real life London. She would eat odd for a child breakfast. London loves to have smoked salmon and capers for breakfast. Maybe she would be like the real life London and have manifesting powers too. If you're a Soul Tour student, you know what I mean. Maybe she would have a magical tool or friend, and she has a bunch. The real life London does, including me, the metaphysician as her mama. She has a council of aunties and, all kinds of things. Maybe she would have this wonderful wild wardrobe like the real life London does, because for London, if it's not gold, it should be. It's pretty much her rule. And London also has a very magical playroom. It's kind of like a portal to another dimension. So maybe this London would too. And maybe she would be actually mildly autistic, but girl style autistic, which is different. Female autistic people are often very verbal and very social, right? But autism looks different in women and girls than it does in men. And maybe she would have, so I kind of went down this kind of a track, and it was super fun to do. And then I heard Julia Donaldson, the writer of The Gruffalo, who was teaching this BBC Maestro class, say, usually a good children's book character can be described in 2 words. And I thought, I've just written pages of description of what this character would be, and I think it's very much informing the stories I would want to tell with her. And with that said, I was like, and you're watching this because this woman is masterful. She has sold over 100 million books. So I thought, let me just do what she says as a thought exercise, right? And what I came up with was, if I had to describe the character, London, I would describe her as unrepressed and magical, which is actually how I also describe the real life London. And so I kind of started to just go on this little beautiful, fun, joyful feeling rampage. The real life London was in front of me. We were singing and reading, and I was jotting things down, what messages do I want to deliver? What values do I want to deliver? What problems might the London character have? And then we were going to go, where did we go? We were going to the zoo, but we ended up getting sidetracked and went somewhere else instead. And before after this little rampage of writing, and before we were going to the zoo, I took a bath. And as I was in the bathtub, I was thinking about Julia Donaldson and what a gift it was that she's given in the form of this masterclass. And I was also thinking that as expert as she is, as masterful as she is, she cannot be more expert than me on one point, which is that I buy a lot of children's books, okay? My daughter probably has 300 books, and this is after our transatlantic move. We gave hundreds of books away. I'll read her 6, 7, 10 books a day some days. And so that's one thing I was really sitting with, which was that kids don't buy books. So Julia Donaldson is great at creating very sellable and very beloved books that are beloved by children. But I also have read a lot about what kinds of books parents buy. And I thought, kids don't buy books, parents buy books. And they buy books, yes, in part based on what their kids' interests are. and in part based on what programs and messaging parents want to instill, let's be real. But also, I thought I buy books often based on what I want to read because I'm the one who's got to read it. And that's the thing that I'm not even sure if Julia Donaldson knows about her books. So I'm going to share this and maybe it'll find its way to her at some point. There is an ineffable quality about her books that I think is part of what makes them sell at the level they do, which is that they are super freaking fun to read as a parent, right? And so, like, they are so lyrical and they're just super fun to read. As someone who loves reading and reads a lot to a child, I love reading those books. I love reading the Gruffalo. All right. And in fact, my child I've had babysitters read them to her and they were like, she didn't even want to hear me read it. She said she wanted to wait till you came and read it because I have so much fun reading it. So it's been interesting that even as I am working on, this nonfiction book and I have an actual fiction, a metaphysical fiction concept for adults. That was what I wanted to turn my attention to this year. What's actually been coming through a lot has been children's work. And just to be very transparent about my process, I don't turn it off. I have total trust that what needs to come through, it will come through. I do my daily ritual, the same one I teach my Soul Tour members and students every day. And then I capture the golden threads of inspiration that drop in and I take them. I usually, if I'm writing and wanting to spend time focused on writing or writing project, I will flow my daily ritual right into my writing project. And what's been coming through is a lot of children's work, and actually not the science princess concept. As I've been exploring, and trying on models of schooling my child, I've been very homeschool curious for a really long time. And so last week I was touring a Waldorf school and somehow it went down this thread of learning about Charlotte Mason homeschooling. I'm not going to talk about it much, just to say, and I'm not going to homeschool my child at this point, but just to say that Charlotte Mason homeschooling and Waldorf schooling have in common the shared love of poetry as a way to transmit art and a way to interact with and engage with children. And I was reading this one woman's diary of being a Charlotte Mason homeschooling parent. And she said it had surprised her how much the children loved poetry. And I don't know why that stuck in my mind a little bit. And then I was reading The Cat in the Hat to London like the next day, and I was like, well, of course children like poetry. The Cat in the Hat is a poem, right? Every Dr. Seuss book is a poem. Many of the Gruffalo is a poem. The Stiffiest Giant in Town is a poem. There are only a few hundred words, and they have choruses and rhymes. They're beautiful. And so what's actually been coming in for me this week has been a children's verse book about that pairs kind of animals with self-regulation and self-expression. And it's super fun and it's truly been download style. I mean, this thing is almost written and it's probably a children's picture book length and I've worked on it for exactly an hour. And it's good. So I'm excited to see where that takes me. So again, yes, we at Soul Tour, we coach adults on how to be their big selves and do their big dreams and live the lives they were born to live, lives in total radical congruence with who they really are. We consult on helping you build the business empire of your soul. And also I'm allowing Soul Tour to also become a multimedia content empire where the work we create for children will help them self-regulate and self-express. Maybe will help them never hide their light or hold themselves back in the first place. Maybe will help support and offer tools to parents who are committed to unrepressed and respectful and therapeutic parenting. And as I was doing, sitting with that and contemplating that, it struck me that everything I teach at Soul Tour, everything we create at Soul Tour is about how to be successful at anything or everything. Not just at everything you could possibly do, but at everything your wise inner being deeply desires to do at soul level, because by doing it, By being it, by doing it, by learning it, by having it, by creating it, by experiencing it, you will fulfill your dreams and your potentials and your sacred contracts. And in fact, that same rubric that we use for helping people understand what their sacred curriculums, their soul and life curriculums are, be, do, have, learn, create, experience. That's actually it, a full circle. As I was building out character development for this children's book, I was like, what would she be? What would she do? What would she have? What would she learn? What would she create? What would she experience? Right? So it's all like one thing. This is like a whole, for me, a whole lifestyle and way of being that is like wildly creatively powered, and that we have thoughts and we give birth to them. We don't hold them in. Okay. All right. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please like this, please share this, please subscribe to this if you don't already. And until we meet again, keep your head up and your heart out.